Well, the NHL trade deadline has come and gone, and while we near the final month of the NHL's regular season, change is in the air, and the Flyers are planning for the future. With our latest Broadcasters Roundtable, Tim Saunders with Brian Boucher, Todd Fedoruk, and Jim Jackson. The dust has settled now after what turned out to be a pretty busy day on Friday. Trade deadlines can go one of two ways. You can have a lot of deals involving little names or few names and a lot of draft picks. This year it was quality over quantity. A lot of big names ended up moving on Friday.
Yeah, Mikko Rantanen, it's been a busy couple of months for him, and now he's going to end up in the same division as where he started it before. Interesting deadline. I mean, Brad Marchand moves on from Boston, goes to Florida. Tampa Bay picks up a guy that helped them win Stanley Cups before. Things, what you thought, what they were prior to the deadline, where teams were at, things changed once the deadline passed. I think now when I look at it, I think there are 8 to 9 teams that feel they have a chance. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be some good matchups in the first round where teams are going to lose, and then that's going to open the door for some other teams. So, and then there's other teams that simply with the eye on the future, right? And that's what certain organizations have to do. They have to look down the road so that they can be a team that participates in a trade deadline down the road where they're adding and not necessarily trying to get ready for the future.
No question, that's where the Flyers are, and these are tough trades. I mean, seeing Scott Laughton go is tough. I mean, it's tough for all of us who know him. It had to be tough for Danny and Jonesy. You know what he brings to the table, not only on the ice, but off the ice in the community. So, but what he got for him was tremendous. You're talking about a legitimate prospect. Most people I've seen or talked to who've seen him say has a lot of work to do, but there is potential there, and he's a big forward, which the Flyers need. So we'll see how that goes, but obviously a first-round pick. And not in next year's draft or this year's draft because they obviously are loaded there. It's the 27 draft. So now you're looking at 3 first-rounders this year, another one next year, and 2 the year after that, and several second-round picks. So draft capital, Danny's doing a great job. Got a 3rd for Kuzmenko, which I thought was also good. I know they had to retain, but who cares? That's just this year. So the retention really doesn't mean that much. And then the Erik Johnson trade was, I think, a favor to Erik, which also shows – the world, the NHL world, that the Flyers, they care about their players and they're trying to put people in good places. So, and Scotty also in Toronto, which is good for his family, and obviously that's where he grew up, and he was a Leafs fan growing up. So, but more to the point with the Laughton trade was what they got back. So, they've gotten some draft capital. With the other trade, the Calgary trade, they've cleared space. They're in good position now to really attack this thing moving forward.
Fridge, the moves Danny made specifically, lots going home basically, and with what his family's been through the last year, that's a positive for Scotty. Nobody wanted to see Scotty leave Philadelphia, but you get a good return there. You do something good for him, and the thing with Erik Johnson, that's goodwill that eventually will, by word of mouth, come back in a good way for the Flyers.
Yeah, the hockey gods will smile upon us one day with things like that. I truly believe that. I think that there is a certain way you trade players, and I don't know if it's been lost, but teams that do the things that the Flyers did with those players, I think amongst players, that carries a lot of weight, right? That within the locker room, within the perception of what the organization is like. To the fan, that it doesn't seem like that matters, but to the player, the body of players, that's extremely valuable to know that. To know that Danny and Jonesy are going to do right for guys when, one, it makes sense for the team to do it, but if it can help that guy, especially a guy like Erik Johnson, that's what it is. It's not everybody deserves that as a player. That's the thing. There's players that are really good that don't deserve to be treated that way, right? They don't. Guys like Erik Johnson, he came and take a very, very limited role. Like, you're riding off into the sunset. You're not going anywhere. You're done here. He did it with a smile on his face. He even contributed more so in that locker room. He's been around for over 1,000+ games. Right. He knows how to be a professional. He knows how to take less, sacrifice for the group. That's why he's important. That's why him going back to Colorado is important. And you can't tell me that they didn't miss him there, because we already missed that energy, that spirit that he brought, right? Scott Laughton's the same way. So if you look at those two guys, why are they so valuable, and why does it hurt the Flyers right now in the short term? Because of how important they are as players in that locker room. That's a big subtraction to how tight that locker room is. Remember, we've talked about that locker room, how it's come together over the last 2 years. That's because of Scott Lawton. That's because of additions like Eric Johnson, right? Even though he was here for a short time, you bring the wrong guy in, that could be a cancer. So Danny and Jonesy know those things. I think they're really being kind of surgical in their acquiring equity, right? Like, well, Scott Lawton getting the first round pick, but then sending him back to Toronto. There's just more value in the trades that they made. And we're going into the draft. Everyone that's looking to make a deal, the first call is going to be the Flyers. We've got all the assets. What is there, 7 first-round picks? And that we
over
have?
the next 3 years?
Over the next, like, that is, it's a good place to be. So it looks good on them, but I think the team is going to, we're seeing what's happening.
I don't know if I'm overplaying the goodwill part of that, but if you want to be a destination spot for free agents to come here in the future, maybe that's setting that groundwork.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it was at the forefront of Danny and Jonesy's mind. Like, they've got to do business too, right? They've got to take care of the organization. If they can help a player at the same time and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I think it certainly helps. I'm not really sure how many offers there were for lots out there. So unless we get that information, you wouldn't really know. But at the end of the day, it's a perfect situation for Scott, truthfully. I mean, he's going home. His wife is from the area. Obviously, they've had to endure the loss of her father, and that's tough on the family. So it's going to be a good spot for him. He's playing for a coach that he played for before in Craig Berube, and he should help their team. I know his first game, it didn't go very well in Colorado. Tough circumstances. You got to fly across the country, play in altitude, new team, all that. He'll be fine. But it's a good situation for him and for the Flyers, obviously getting the first-round pick and a prospect. That's good business.
Present company accepted. One of my favorite guys that's ever been through here from a personal standpoint, and we know what he meant to this team both on and off the ice. Hard to see guys like that go, but that's what makes.
I'll say present company included.
Oh, nice! Wow,
These are 2 very great, they're great guys. But Lutz is right at the top of the list.
That's why that job is so hard. You got to be willing to make those difficult decisions. Even going back to the Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee trade, if you're gonna move forward and continue to get better, you got to make the hard choices to give yourself the flexibility to make future moves.
Yeah, I mean, important people in the locker room, good players, good relationships, but you have to give an honest evaluation to where the team is at and what your team needs are and who's going to be a part of the team going forward. And I think that's what Danny and Jonesy have been doing over the last couple of seasons now. Sometimes it takes a little longer to play it out the way you want to play it out. It's going to be an interesting offseason for the Flyers. It's going to be leading up to the draft. I think all eyes will be on Philadelphia to see if they are going to make moves with some of that draft capital in order to acquire players that are ready now to give this rebuild a nice acceleration.
I don't think for a moment that the Flyers are going to use all of those draft picks, even this year, on selecting players. It's capital to package and maybe get guys that could help sooner than later.
Yes, or move up in the draft.
Right.
They could do that as well. But yes, I think that 7 picks in the first 2 rounds, I can't imagine all 7 are chosen. But who knows? I mean, never say never. But
somebody that wants to make a deal with you too, right?
Yeah, you have to. It takes 2 to tango. So we'll see on that. But I mean, they're in good position cap-wise too. The cap going up, and they've already obviously cut from that cap with the Calgary trade, with Farabee's contract, and eventually Ryan Ellis's comes out. So I mean, there's you can see where Danny now has room to be flexible and creative, and we saw with his very first trade, the Ivan Provorov trade, that he can be very creative. So now he's got the weapons to use some of that creativity, and I'm sure he will. Whether it's this summer or next, I don't know. I mean, we all hope it's this summer. We're all impatient people, but he's got to see what the market bears, what the free agents. I haven't looked enough at the free agents out there now. Of course, that's changed with Rantanen off the market and some others. Mitch Marner's out there. I mean, you know, how big do you go at this point of the rebuild? So a lot of questions still out there, but he has the flexibility now. That's for sure.
You kind of mentioned the prospect that comes comes back in the Lawton trade. A lot of people don't know here about Nikita Grubenkin, but I've heard him called a perfect fit in Philadelphia. I think Elliot Friedman said he's like a Tasmanian devil, really good with the puck. Apparently knows Michkov. Michkov knows him, so who knows? This kid could end up being a pretty big part of that trade.
I think you're going to have a European-Russian influence in this team for a lot of years. I think that, why not, right? Some of the most skilled players in the world are coming from Russia. I think we've got one of the most attractive to Russians players over here now in young Michkov. And if he's got friends that are of the same caliber and playing in the same space as him, yeah, you want them here, right? But in the same breath, you got to balance it, right? So they are the same age. I do like to pick. I remember seeing him hit. I watched some video of this guy hitting. He's got the ability to hit, to pop guys. He's got skill, size. That's another thing. He's 6'2", so he uses it to his advantage. He's got a boisterous attitude already. I think he will fit in well here, and the fact that him and Michkov did play together and are friends is crucial.
Forecheck, back check, paycheck.
Forecheck, back check, paycheck. That kid's never going to live that down. one of the player development guys probably told him to say that in that interview, but he seems like a character.
Well, and won at the KHL level too, right? I think won a championship there.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, I don't know if people look into that enough. I always felt like when we were coming up with the Phantoms, we were around a winning culture there, and I think that type of stuff sometimes gets lost here recently. I think everybody's so concerned about skill, speed, ability. How about coming from a place where you won before? Like, I think getting people like that, that's where you get the intangibles of players, as opposed to just, oh, he's super skilled, or I like his size. I like a player you're right. The Flyers, they need some size. So he's got that. He's won before at the pro level in Russia. Adjusting to North America this year. Hopefully it works out.
Sometimes, again, the best deals are the ones you don't make. There was another guy being talked about and perhaps maybe being moved in Rasmus Ristolainen. In my mind, that's a classic example of a guy that played himself into a better position, made himself more valuable here, and because he's got term, soon as you move that guy, you're looking for a big defenseman to replace him. So I was happy that Risto's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he did, I think, what most GMs and management of teams do, which is take the spot, because they need that. What he did is he revved up his game. He started listening and started using those legs, playing more physical, becoming everything that you want that prototypical 6'2", hard-nosed, front-of-the-net D-man to be. The bigger guys, the heavier defensemen, which you need to win. He became that this year, but he was always on the bubble. Is he going to do it? Is he going to be that for us? And that's why he was such a big asset to be traded. Well, once you get into that position where now he's doing it for us, you can't let him go, because then that's what everybody's looking for. And guys like that are not a dime a dozen. Guys that play the way that he's playing right now, move the puck the way that he's moving the puck, and then the ability to go up ice too, which we just started seeing this year. He played himself into position on that, like on a championship team. That's what you do. You play into the role, and he took it. So you got to keep him now, and I like that. I really like that, because I was thinking like we can get a lot for him right now, but then you're never going to replace him. How are you going to replace that? It's too hard to replace that, and I think that's a nice little feather in the cap for the Flyers to have Ristolainen staying here and solidifying a position.
He is 30 though, so I would say that bodes for the Flyers doing something pretty actively this summer, because you get to 31, 32, 33. These Konechny and Sanheim are getting into the late 20s. Even Tippett and Cates are now 26. So you start to see the ages of these players, and you start to say maybe we need to accelerate the rebuild. And given they've had some setbacks. I mean, they lost their starting goaltender in the middle of this rebuild. That sets you back, and obviously the Cutter Gauthier and all that. So they've had some adversity to overcome, the leadership group, and they've handled them. And now we have to see where they feel we're at. And they've always said, I think we said this in the last Broadcasters Roundtable, that the players will tell them where they're at in the rebuild. So the players are making those answers. They felt that Farabee and Frost were two to move on from. Scotty obviously was always a potential because of his age and where he was at contract-wise. So we're seeing now some of the answers to those questions. But there's still guys who are still here that they're being evaluated.
I wonder if the playing field hasn't changed a little bit. Not to forecast the future, but did what St. Louis did last summer with the offer sheets for the two guys in Edmonton, did that change what might happen this summer? To me, it's almost destined. I think we're going to see more teams, whether it's the Flyers or not, be involved in offer sheets.
Yeah, I mean, it's a useful tool if you see a team is in trouble cap-wise. I mean, with the cap going up, I don't know if it's as dire as it was last summer. Edmonton really was in a precarious situation, and so yeah, it was some good business done by Doug Armstrong to feast on that and got two pretty good players. So yeah, I mean, it's a way you can get something accomplished, but you know, I feel like even signing a free agent is something you look at, but also just making a trade. Like, I mean, you can trade for a player if you've got the assets. That's something that the Flyers can look at too. I as you said, I don't know if it's going to happen this summer, but all eyes will be on Philadelphia. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this for forever now, that with all of these assets, they, you know, do they do it or not? I don't know the answer. And again, it takes two to tango. You got to be able to have another trading partner to make a deal. I hope it happens because I think guys like Sanheim and Konechny, they've been patient. They've hung in there. This is a hard time for them right now. Like, you know, they've played very hard. They've competed very hard to put themselves in a position where, you know, the team is still hanging in there. And these last 18 games are going to be hard for these guys. Like, they've got to find a way to pick up their bootstraps and get back to work and understand that they've got to be professionals. But trust me, nobody wants to look forward to playing 18 games where it doesn't matter and you know you're going to be going to the World Championships after. Right. Like, that's not something that you look forward to. You look forward to the playoffs. So I feel for those guys. And I think Danny, I think he owes it to players like that to give those guys a situation where what we're doing right now is not happening going forward. Yeah, and the sooner you can do it, the better for them because they'll get more cracks at trying to win in the playoffs.
All this kind of brings to mind, too, that the importance of getting Michkov here when they did, because that in itself, I mean, this has been a hugely important year. It's going to be an even bigger summer for Michkov physically to do what he's got to do to prepare for next year. But that kind of, and Danny has sort of said, it kind of sped up the timeline a little bit just because he's further, or they're further ahead than they would have had Michkov not arrived when he did.
Well, isn't that the way you want it to be done? You want the players to push your timeline. You want players and things that happen because there's a lot of unknowns. You're talking about one in the summertime. I think that tactic is going to be used a lot more to call out guys that are mismanaging their teams. I think they almost have to use that, the offer sheet. Because if you get to a position, you're winning a team, and you're not managing that team where you can keep the assets in order to win, you don't deserve to keep them. I think that offer sheet should come into play and will. And you're going to see teams in that space now. It'll only come into play when there's actually space. Now there's cap space, they're jumping it up, so there's more room. I'm really excited about that, but I think that stuff comes into play, and then it comes down to if things are going to speed it up, they have to be done on luck. Like we were not expecting Michkov to get over here. Plus, even how it's gone for him this year, like he's one of the top rookies. Like at the start of the year, you want that to happen, but it rarely does it go that way. The projections of these top guys, you know, he's following that suit. So I think what they're starting to do is also build around him, right? Build and make decisions. That's what it does. It speeds up those decisions of, well, what do we need now? Now we clearly know we need a big center, right? We clearly know we need some big wingers. The way that he plays with he's got an attitude. He plays pissed off. You're going to need guys that are going to be there so that he can keep that fire, right? Yeah. And things like that. So those come into play as you're building. And I think Jonesy and Briere, they got their finger on top of that right now. And to add on to what Boucher was talking about the Konechnys, those guys also have a right to be able to play and win. And he's spot on. It's very hard because those guys are depending on their buddies that are playing with them, that are leaders in the locker room, that are doing it with them. When you take those away, there's a big hole. Can they step up? Are they the players to step up, or should they have to, right? Because they've been around a long time. They're marquee. They just both went to the Four Nations.
Yep.
So their stock is through the roof. That taste of that tournament probably opened their eyes to a lot. And then that flavor of living or winning, that's there too, right? So, yeah, Danny's got to take care of what's here as well. And I think that timeline is shortening, which all leads to, thank God it accelerated with Michkov.
Yeah. Who won at trade deadline time? I mean, did it change your mind, and who is a favorite this spring? Obviously, Colorado, Florida, Dallas.
Overall?
Those three teams, I think, improved the most.
Did we go through this, though, a week after, a couple days after, and invariably, it's another team that succeeds at maybe a subtle change.
Like
I really like what Colorado did, but they have made so many changes this year. Will they be in sync? They looked great the other night. I got to tell you, that was one of the fastest games. I was watching that game, and it looked like Four Nations speed, the Colorado-Toronto game. So I really like what they did, but a lot of times it's these teams that make a ton of moves, and it just doesn't all quite come together. So it's going to be fun to watch over the next couple of weeks how Colorado meshes, how Rantanen meshes in Dallas. Florida making changes to an already successful team. Will Marchand really have much impact there? He's obviously injured right now. Interesting trade by Ottawa. They got a guy who I really love in Dylan Cousins, and traded evidently a very popular player away. I mean, Brady Tkachuk was obviously, yeah. So how is that going to impact them? So, yeah, there's a lot of teams to watch now to see. You guys have played. Chemistry is such a weird thing. You change your room, and it can have an impact you had no idea was going to happen.
Yeah. Dallas and Colorado's work probably stands out as the most impressive to me. I think Florida's was very good too, picking up Seth Jones. That's going to be a great pickup for them. Yeah. They needed a right shot D-man. They didn't need Spencer Knight anymore. Bobrovsky's gotten things back on the rails in the last couple of years. So great pickup in the East for Florida, and I think they are the favorite in the East, Florida. But keep in mind, as it sits right now, Dallas and Colorado, that's a first-round matchup if it ended today. So one of those great teams is out.
Toronto, Tampa, possibly.
Yeah. And I like Tampa's pickup, too, of Yanni Gordon and Oliver Bjorkstrand. I think now that solidifies a top 9. And keep in mind, when they won before, they won with a top 9. They played 11 forwards in a lot of those series when they won, and they got a great goaltender. Hedman, I don't know the extent to his.
I think he's coming back soon.
Okay,
yeah,
so obviously if he's out, all bets are off. Yeah. But they're a team that scares me. I mean, John Cooper's a terrific coach. They've got experience. They're kind of ascending at the right time. They'd be a scary team in the playoffs. But to me, it's about Dallas and Colorado. I sure hope for hockey purposes that they don't face each other in the first round. Maybe Winnipeg falls down and then business gets taken care of there.
He's right though. You can't make the mistake of saying the teams that improve the most are clearly going to be the Stanley Cup winner.
Yeah.
Winnipeg didn't do much.
No,
they could very well still be very much in the picture.
I don't know. I don't see it.
You don't like Winnipeg?
I don't. I think their second line is going to be a problem in the playoffs. I know they're fast and skilled right now, but when this is not a disrespect to Vlad Nemestikov, but that's your second line center going up against the competition that you're going to. They have to finish first in that conference. They have to, because if they drop to 2-3 and they get one of Colorado or Dallas, I think it's lights out for them.
You always told us though
the other team in the next round if they somehow.
You always told us though the goaltender is the great equalizer.
Well, he's got
playoff questions himself.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's going to feel the pressure. I don't care how good a regular season he has or the Vezina that he's going to win. When that first game of playoffs starts in Canada, the questions are going to be coming. Can he get it done? And until he wins a series emphatically 4-1 or 4-0, that question will be there.
Relatively quiet by their standards, deadline for Vegas, but watch them too. Yeah, that's that team. I think.
Yeah, there's 5 teams out west that could. It's a.
Yeah.
I still believe in those strong ones. I think Dallas will squeak by Edmonton, Winnipeg,
certainly capable. Yeah.
Vegas, Colorado, and Dallas.
Yep.
any one of those could upset, and that's how it all lines up.
Boy, we're
So it's
going
going
out
to be
on a limb
interesting.
here, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're
No,
really-
I know. I'm just.
It's
I think there's 9 teams.
That's
I
how-
think there's 9 teams that
Yes.
really feel that they can do it, and I don't know that I could say that prior to the trade deadline.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's talk about the team here, because obviously they haven't come out of that 5-game point streak the way they had hoped. They haven't been able to maintain that momentum. At the time of this taping, the Flyers have dropped 4 in a row. I thought Sunday's game against the Devils a little better than the previous 3, but it's pretty clear when they get away from their structure, man, they don't defend well enough to be successful.
I think right now, like I was trying to say earlier, this is a hard time for players, right? You battle so hard to give yourself a chance, and the way players think and the way management thinks, totally 2 different things. Players come to the rink, they think about winning, they think how I can help my team win, what do I have to do? Management thinks about how can we improve our team today, going forward, future, all of that. So but when trades are made and you're in a situation, it's sometimes it can rattle you. And I think right now the Flyers, I see the frustration. Yesterday I was at ice level, and I really got a sense of there was a lot of frustration down there at times, and you can just see it. Guys like Konechny, it's hard on them, and I just wouldn't discredit.
He got
that.
his whole wolf pack traded.
I just feel like it's
They're
hard.
gone.
It's hard to recover from that, like turn the page and quickly. The guys are professionals, but it's still hard. They're human beings at the end of the day, and I think that's what we're dealing with right now. Hopefully, they can continue to compete. Guys like Cates has had a great year. They're making great strides. Forster, continue to compete. Show up. If the other team's going to win, they gotta go through you. With that mentality. And if you win or lose, to me, that's not what's important. It's about just making sure you're a professional, coming to the rink every day, and hopefully it's not so dreadful, this time of year.
Earlier we talked about chemistry for the contenders, but the Flyers now have to find a new chemistry. They've lost 3 players, especially. I don't really count Kuzmenko because he wasn't here long enough. Yeah. EJ wasn't really playing enough, but he was part of the chemistry too. Yeah. But when you're talking about Frost, Farabee, and Lawton, these are guys who have been here a while. Lott's he's in the heart of the chemistry of this team and the culture that we talk about. So that has to be kind of remade. It has to morph now. Mm-hmm. Some of the guys you mentioned have to take bigger roles in the leadership group. Maybe a Tyson Forster and Noah Cates and some of these players, Owen Tippett. TK is a leader, but he can't do it all himself. Sanheim might need to be a little bit more vocal now. It's not really in his makeup, but he leads by example. But some of these other guys, Cam York, these guys have to step up. The chemistry has to kind of morph together. John Tortorella is good at developing that, so I think he'll spend the rest of the season trying to reestablish that culture and chemistry. But when you lose 3 brothers or 4 brothers, you guys know it's we treat these guys like numbers and machines and stats, but you're human beings. Yep. And so it's tough. So we'll see how they respond, but it has to morph again, and that's, I think, one of the things that has to be accomplished here down the stretch.
We do get caught up so much with combinations, who's playing with who, and you actually have now 2 lines that have kind of meshed together. Michkov and Tippett with Coots has been good. The Cates line's been good for a long time. I never dreamed that we'd be wondering who the leading scorer on this team all year is going to find to mesh with at this point, because right now he's kind of on the outside looking for that chemistry with somebody.
And I think that's maybe some of the frustration that he's probably feeling too right now, right? The team is kind of at this point, and I think he, who had been such a strong contributor for the first 2/3 of the season.
Yeah, 60-70%.
Yeah. So I think he's feeling that, but big picture, he's been so good.
He's trying too hard.
I know,
right?
He's trying too hard. Yeah. He wants it so badly, and I feel bad for him because he's been a lifelong Flyer, and he hasn't experienced the same experiences, Friggy, that we had. You know what I mean? Where this team was playing deep into the playoffs, and that's the one thing about being a Flyer that's so great. The springtime here is amazing when you're in the playoffs, and I know he wants it badly. And like you said, they got the taste of it at the 4 Nations, and hopefully that day comes for them soon, and it's long lasting. That's what I hope for those guys, because they've really been great Flyers. He and Sanheim.
Road ahead is not gonna be easy. They've got the rest of this long homestand. Then they got a 10-day road trip coming up. I kind of forgot about that. They're gonna face some good teams, and we might see some new faces. Do we see Jet Lachenko reappear after 12 seasons over? He can still play 5 games before they burn a year, his first year of his entry-level contract. Andre is here. We may see more guys up from Lehigh, so who knows? It could still be an interesting final, 5-6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think if you're not looking and maximizing your ability to look at your assets, what we have, there's a lot of players down there, and there's a lot of good work being done down there with Lappy and the coaching staff too. The players that are coming up here playing the right way, falling right into the system, into Tortorella's system. That's important in an organization to have the teams doing that, your assets, your younger players doing that. So yeah, I want Lachenko here, like from my perspective, I want those guys here. I want to see what they've got. I want to see if they can do something more than that little window they had at the beginning of the year, because I really like what Lachenko brought. We thought he was going to stay here, the way he was playing. This year did good for him. You've heard about him all year. Bump, you got these guys. If you can pull them in and play, not taking them away from their experience, because we're talking about that experience getting into playoffs. That's just mirrored all through the levels. So winning is winning, right? Or whether you're a championship, all those things come into play, but experiencing that is everything. So even if some of those kids have experienced that, bring them in here. Yeah, get them all here so we can see what we got. Stay with whatever's positive, right? If you're looking at the positives, Michkov's a massive up, right? So is the line combination of Frost. Are those pieces that you have in Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final? I think that's what you got to make your decisions through, right?
There's still
Michkov's one of them. That's a great line.
Yeah, there's still evaluation going on. Sam Harrison's got a big stretch coming up here. Yep. I believe in Sam, but his plays dipped at the wrong time for him. He really needs to finish strong here. Jamie Drysdale has been making strides, has to continue to show that. So there's still individual players we really have to watch here down the stretch that need to make statements and just continue the progression.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully we can get a couple surprises in the guys that are developing.
The skid won't last forever. They're going to come out of this, and it will make for a fun end to the regular season. With our latest Broadcasters Roundtable, Tim Saunders for Brian Boucher, Todd Fedoruk, Jim Jackson. Enjoy the games.